The lights went out at 4:47 p.m., exactly 3 hours and 13 minutes before the investors were supposed to arrive. In the executive suite on the 42nd floor, coffee spilled across marble countertops, presentation screens flickered into blackness, and a room full of vice presidents started shouting over each other like children in a power outage. Down in the basement mechanical room, Adrian Cole stood motionless in the dark, one hand still on the breaker panel, listening to the hum of silence where machinery used to be. He'd seen sabotage before, just never aimed at him. If you want to know how a man nobody noticed became the only one who could save them all, and why he almost walked away anyway, then stay with me until the end of this story. And if you're watching from anywhere in the world, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see just how far this one travels. The basement smelled like oil and old concrete, the kind of smell that gets into your work boots and never really comes out. Adrian had been down there for 6 years. 6 years of grease under his fingernails. 6 years of being invisible to everyone who rode the elevator past the 3rd floor. 6 years of keeping Halcyon Technologies running while people in suits took credit for the lights staying on. He didn't mind. Invisibility had its advantages. "Dad, are you coming tonight?" His daughter's voice crackled through the phone earlier that morning, small and hopeful. "Ms. Ramirez says I'm one of the finalists. You promised." "I'll be there, Mia. 7 o'clock, front row." "You always say that." "And I'm always there, aren't I?" A pause, then quieter. "Yeah, you are." He'd hung up smiling, but the smile didn't last. Tonight was her school's robotics showcase, the thing she'd been working on for 3 months, the thing that made her eyes light up in a way that reminded him so much of her mother. It hurt. He'd already cleared it with his supervisor. He'd be out by 5:30, across town by 6:15, in his seat by 6:45. That was the plan. The plan died at 4:47 p.m. when every system in the building flatlined at once. Adrian stood in the mechanical room now, emergency lighting casting long shadows across the walls. He moved through the darkness with the efficiency of someone who'd walked these halls 1,000 times, his flashlight beam cutting through dust motes as he made his way to the main electrical panel. It didn't make sense. The backup generators should have kicked in within seconds. They were state-of-the-art, installed 8 months ago after the last failure nearly cost the company a contract. Adrian had overseen the installation himself, double-checked every connection, run diagnostics weekly. But the generator sat silent. He pulled open the panel, scanning rows of breakers with practiced eyes. Everything looked normal, too normal, which meant someone had made it look that way. His radio crackled. "Adrian, you down there?" Carl's voice tight with panic. Carl had worked security for 15 years, and Adrian had never heard him sound like that. "I'm here." "You need to get up to 42, now." "I'm working on the power, Carl. Give me 20 minutes. "Adrian." A pause. "They're asking for you by name." That stopped him. Nobody on 42 knew his name. He was maintenance or facilities, or, if they were feeling generous, the fix-it guy. "Who's asking?" "All of them." The executive suite looked like a disaster zone. Laptops glowed with dying battery light, casting faces in blue and shadow. Someone had propped open the blinds, letting in the last of the afternoon sun, but it only made the room look more desperate, all that natural light showing just how much they depended on the artificial kind. Adrian counted 12 people. He recognized most of them from building directories and the occasional elevator ride where they'd stare at their phones and pretend he didn't exist. Vincent Mark stood at the head of the table, silver-haired and furious, his suit probably worth more than Adrian's truck. Next to him, Jennifer Reeves from operations kept refreshing her dead laptop like it might suddenly decide to cooperate. And then there was Lena Hart. She stood apart from the others, leaning against the window with her arms crossed, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Adrian knew who she was. Everyone did. 28, MBA, from somewhere impressive, 3 promotions in 2 years. Word around the maintenance department was she'd be running the place before she turned 35. She was the only one who'd ever said hello to him in the elevator. Finally. Vincent didn't look at Adrian, just gestured vaguely at the dead room. "We have investors arriving at 8 p.m. Major investors. The kind who don't appreciate showing up to a building with no power." "I'm aware of the timeline, sir." "Then you're aware we need this fixed, now." Adrian set his toolkit down carefully. I'll need to assess the damage first. Could be the main transformer. Could be... I don't need a list of maybes. I need solutions. Mr. Marks. Lena's voice cut through the tension, calm and sharp at the same time. Let him work. Vincent turned to her, and Adrian saw something flicker across his face. Irritation mixed with something else. Caution, maybe. Like he wanted to snap at her but couldn't quite afford to. The presentation is in 3 hours, Lena. We're showing the Aurora project to people who could make or break this company. If we don't have power, then we don't have power, and yelling at Adrian won't change that. She looked directly at Adrian then, and he saw it. Recognition. Like she actually saw him as a person instead of a service. How long do you need? To diagnose? 30 minutes? To fix? He paused. Depends what's broken. That's not good enough. Jennifer slammed her laptop shut. We should be calling the city's emergency services, getting a crew out here. Which will take 4 hours minimum, Lena said. I already checked. Silence. Then Vincent, quieter. Fine. 30 minutes. But Adrian? He finally made eye contact. If you can't fix this, I need to know now so we can start making calls. Adrian wanted to say a lot of things. Wanted to point out that 6 years of perfect uptime hadn't earned him the benefit of the doubt, that his daughter was waiting for him across town, that maybe if they'd listened when he'd recommended upgraded surge protection last year, this wouldn't be happening. Instead, he said, I'll do my best, sir. He picked up his toolkit and headed for the door. Behind him, the arguing started up again. Accusations, finger-pointing, the usual executive panic. He tuned it out. Adrian, wait. Lena caught up with him in the hallway, her heels clicking on marble that was barely visible in the emergency lighting. Yeah? She hesitated, and for a moment she looked younger than 28, uncertain. Can you actually fix it? Honest question. He gave her an honest answer. I don't know yet, but if anyone's going to, it'll be me. That's what I thought. She glanced back toward the conference room. They don't know what they have with you. Most people don't notice the plumbing until it backs up. That got a small smile. Fair point. Then more seriously. Is there anything you need? Anything I can do to help? He thought about it. Keep them off my back. I work better without an audience. Done. She started to walk away, then stopped. Adrian, for what it's worth, I hope you make it to wherever you need to be tonight. He stared at her. How did you? You've checked your watch 6 times since you got here, and you've got that look people get when they're torn between 2 places. Another small smile. Good luck. With all of it. She disappeared back into the conference room, leaving Adrian alone in the dim hallway with his toolkit and 3 hours until his daughter's showcase. 2 hours and 45 minutes until the investors arrived. He checked his watch again. Then he headed for the basement. The mechanical room was Adrian's cathedral, all humming machinery and color-coded pipes, systems within systems that kept 43 floors of technology running smooth. He'd memorized every valve, every junction box, every quirk in the building's temperament. He knew which breaker tended to trip in summer heat, which pump made a clicking sound that meant nothing, which backup battery had been slowly dying for a month and would need replacement soon. He knew all of it, which was how he knew, within 10 minutes of serious investigation, that this wasn't an accident. The main transformer was fine. The backup generators were fine. Everything was fine, except for a single relay switch deep in the emergency power system, a switch that had been manually disabled and then carefully repositioned to look normal. Adrian crouched next to it, his flashlight illuminating fresh scratches on the housing. Someone had been here recently. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. His radio crackled. Adrian, it's Carl again. How's it looking? Complicated. That's not what I wanted to hear, man. People are getting antsy up there. Tell them I need another hour. You said 30 minutes. Yeah, well, things changed. He clicked off before Carl could argue and sat back on his heels, thinking. The sabotage was clean, professional. Whoever did this wanted the power to fail at a specific time, wanted it to look like a random malfunction, wanted the company scrambling right when they needed to look competent. Someone inside the company. Someone who knew about the investor meeting. He pulled out his phone, thought about calling Mia, thought about telling her he might be late. His thumb hovered over her contact, then he put the phone away. Not yet. He still had time. Maybe. The relay switch was toast, physically damaged in a way that couldn't be quickly repaired, but the building's power system had redundancies, backup routes that could circumvent the disabled relay. Adrian had designed some of them himself, unauthorized modifications he'd made over the years to give himself options when things went wrong. Things were definitely wrong now. He could reroute power through the auxiliary system, bypass the damaged relay entirely. It would work. Probably. The auxiliary system wasn't designed to carry full building load, but if he was careful, if he balanced the distribution just right, if he manually monitored the whole thing to prevent overload, it was risky. The kind of risky that could turn a blackout into a fire. But it was the only option that didn't involve waiting 4 hours for the city's emergency crew. Adrian stood, grabbed his toolkit, and headed for the auxiliary panel 3 floors down. His phone buzzed. A text from Mia. "Still coming right?" "Absolutely," he typed back. Wouldn't miss it. He hoped he wasn't lying. The auxiliary panel was older than the main system, installed back when the building was first constructed in the 90s. Adrian had been maintaining it for years, keeping it functional even though it was technically obsolete. The company's executives wanted to replace it last year, but budget cuts had pushed that off indefinitely. Good thing they'd been cheap. He opened the panel and started tracing circuits, his fingers moving with the muscle memory of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. The auxiliary system could handle maybe 60% of the building's normal load, enough for lights, elevators, basic HVAC. The servers and presentation equipment would need more, which meant he'd have to get creative. He spent 20 minutes rewiring connections, redirecting power flows, building a fragile network that would distribute electricity through pathways it was never meant to handle. It was the electrical equivalent of performing surgery with a pocket knife, crude, dangerous, and likely to leave scars. But it would work. Probably. His radio crackled again. This time it wasn't Carl. "Adrian, it's Lena. What's your status?" He keyed the mic, making progress. "Tell me something. Does anyone in your department have a reason to want tonight's presentation to fail?" Static silence. Then, "What did you find?" "Someone disabled a relay switch, manually. This wasn't a random failure." He heard her take a breath. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." "Vincent needs to know about this. Vincent needs to decide if he wants me to fix the power or investigate sabotage. I can't do both in..." He checked his watch. 2 hours and 17 minutes. Another pause. "Fix the power. I'll handle Vincent." "You sure about that?" "No." Her voice had an edge to it now, something sharp and determined. "But I'm doing it anyway." The radio went dead. Adrian went back to his wiring. 45 minutes later, he had something that resembled a functional power system. It was ugly, held together with temporary connections and bypassed safety protocols, but it would work. For a few hours at least. Long enough for the presentation, long enough for him to get to Mia's showcase. Maybe. He made his way back to the main mechanical room, every connection point memorized, every potential failure mode mapped in his head. The backup generators would stay offline, too risky to integrate them into his jerry-rigged system. Instead, he'd pulled power from 3 different sources and balanced them in a configuration that would make any licensed electrician weep. His phone buzzed. Another text from Mia. "Miss Ramirez wants to know if you're bringing the camera. She says they're recording everyone." "Camera's in my truck," he sent back. "I'll grab it when I get there." "You promise you're coming?" He looked at his watch. 6:23 p.m. If he activated the power now, monitored it for 15 minutes to make sure it was stable, he could be out by 6:45. Across town by 7:10. Late, but there. "Promise," he typed. He put the phone away and reached for the main activation switch. Then the door opened behind him. Adrian turned to find Vincent Marks standing in the doorway, Lena right behind him. Vincent looked older in the emergency lighting, tired in a way that expensive suits couldn't hide. "Lena says you found sabotage," Vincent said. "That's right." "Show me." Adrian led them to the disabled relay, pointed out the scratches, explained the deliberate damage. Vincent listened without interrupting, his expression hardening with each detail. "Who?" he said when Adrian finished. "Can't tell you that. But whoever it was had access to this room and knew exactly what to hit. That's a short list. Vincent pulled out his phone, started scrolling through contacts. I'm calling the police. No, Lena said. Both men looked at her. If we call the police now, they'll shut down the building for investigation. We'll lose the presentation, lose the investors, lose everything. She looked at Adrian. Can you fix it? Already did. Sort of. Sort of? He explained the auxiliary system, the rerouted power, the temporary connections. Vincent's face went from pale to gray. You're saying our entire building is going to be running on what amounts to a mechanical Band-Aid? A very carefully designed Band-Aid, but yeah. For how long? Few hours. Maybe less if we push it too hard. And if it fails? Adrian met his eyes. If it fails during activation, we get another blackout. If it fails during operation, we could blow out half the electrical system in the building. Vincent ran a hand through his silver hair. This is insane. It's what we've got, Lena said. Unless you want to cancel the presentation. You know I can't do that. Aurora is our future. Without this funding... He trailed off, then looked at Adrian. If I give you the go-ahead, can you keep it stable? If I monitor it constantly, manually balance the load, stay ready to shut everything down if it starts to cascade? Yeah, I can keep it stable. How constantly? Adrian understood what he was really asking. I'd need to stay with the system the whole time. Can't leave it unattended. His phone buzzed. He didn't need to check it to know what it said. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Then, I know you have somewhere to be tonight. That surprised him. Sir? Lena told me, some kind of school thing for your daughter. Vincent looked uncomfortable, like human sympathy didn't fit well in his usual vocabulary. If there was any other way, there it was. The choice. His daughter's face in his mind, bright and hopeful. You promised. The building's systems in front of him, fragile and failing. 300 employees who'd lose their jobs if Aurora fell through. One little girl who'd lose her faith in promises. How much time do I have? Adrian heard himself say. Investors arrive at 8. Presentation starts at 8:30, runs for 90 minutes. We need power stable until 10 o'clock, minimum. 7:30 to 10 p.m. 2.5 hours. Mia's showcase started at 7 and ran until 8:30. They didn't overlap. Except for the part where he couldn't be in two places at once. Lena was watching him with something that looked like sympathy, or maybe pity. Adrian, if you need to go, I'll do it, he said. The words felt like they came from someone else, someone who knew how to make impossible choices and live with them afterward. Vincent nodded once, already pulling out his phone to make calls. Get the power up. I'll handle the rest. He left. Lena stayed. Adrian, I need to activate the system, he said, turning back to the panel. You should head upstairs. You don't have to do this. Yeah, I do. Why? He thought about it. About his daughter waiting in an auditorium across town. About 300 people who'd never noticed him until they needed him. About promises and responsibilities, and all the ways they tore you apart when you couldn't keep both. Because if I don't, someone else suffers for it, he said finally. And I guess I'm tired of that. Lena was quiet for a moment, then, for what it's worth, I think you're making the wrong choice. Probably. But I understand why you're making it. He looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't wearing the usual executive armor, the confidence, the certainty. She just looked sad. Go, he said. I've got work to do. She left. Adrian pulled out his phone and typed a message to his daughter. Something came up at work. Emergency. I'm so sorry, Mia. I can't make it tonight. He stared at the words for a long time before hitting send. Then he activated the power. Chance. The building came alive in stages. First the lights, flickering hesitantly before steadying into full brightness. Then the elevators, their machinery humming back to life. Then the HVAC, the servers, the security systems, everything cascading online in a sequence that Adrian had to manually control to prevent overload. He stood at the auxiliary panel with both hands on the controls, watching gauges and monitors, feeling the building's electrical pulse through his fingertips. The system held. Barely. Power distribution was uneven. He'd overloaded the third-floor circuits to compensate for weakness in the main trunk line. The server room was pulling more amperage than the auxiliary system wanted to provide, forcing him to dial back power to the lower floors. It was like conducting an orchestra where every instrument was slightly out of tune and threatening to explode. But it held. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. Buzzed again. Again. He finally checked it between adjustments. 7 messages from Mia, starting with confusion and ending with something that hurt to read. I thought you promised. Miss Ramirez says I can use her phone to record my presentation so you can watch it later. I guess that's okay. I love you, Dad. He closed his eyes, opened them, went back to monitoring the electrical flow. The radio crackled. Adrian, it's Vincent. Investors are here. Power's holding so far. Good work. Don't thank me yet. We're running hot on the upper floors. If someone decides to turn on every light and computer at once, we're done. I'll make sure that doesn't happen. You do that. 30 minutes passed. The presentation would be starting soon. Adrian made micro adjustments, shaving power from one system to feed another, keeping everything balanced on a knife's edge. His phone rang. Mia's school. He let it go to voicemail. 45 minutes. His phone buzzed with a video message. He knew what it was, knew he couldn't watch it now, couldn't afford the distraction. He put the phone face down on the console. An hour. The auxiliary panel started making a sound it shouldn't make, a high-pitched whine that meant something was overheating. Adrian killed power to the 4th floor break rooms, rerouted the load through a tertiary line he'd been holding in reserve. The whine stopped. The building held. His daughter was probably off stage now, probably watching other kids present their projects, probably wondering why her dad had promised and then broken that promise like it didn't matter. It mattered. It mattered more than any of this. But he stayed. An hour and 15 minutes. The power fluctuated. Just a minor dip, barely noticeable, but Adrian saw it in the gauges. Something was degrading. He traced the problem to a transformer on the 7th floor, one of his temporary connections starting to fail under sustained load. He could shut it down, redistribute the power, but that would kill electricity to the entire West Wing, including the executive suite where the presentation was happening. Or he could leave it, hope it held for another 45 minutes. Or he could do something incredibly stupid. Adrian grabbed his toolkit and ran for the stairs. Damn. The 7th floor was office space, mostly empty at this hour. Adrian moved through cubicles in the semi-darkness, following the sound of electrical strain to a junction box mounted on the far wall. He opened it and confirmed what he'd suspected. One of his improvised connections was literally melting, the wire coating starting to blacken and smoke. 5 minutes until it failed completely. Maybe less. He killed power to the junction box, worked in the dark with a penlight clenched between his teeth, his fingers moving fast to disconnect the damaged wire and reroute through a parallel line. The new connection was even more temporary than the last one, held in place with electrical tape and hope. But it would work. Probably. He restored power and the lights flickered back on. The transformer stopped whining. Adrian allowed himself one moment of relief. Then the fire alarm went off. The sound was deafening in the empty office space, a piercing electronic shriek that meant evacuation, emergency, everything going wrong at once. Adrian's first thought was his repair job, but no, there was no smoke, no heat, nothing burning, which meant the fire was somewhere else. He ran for the stairs, taking them 3 at a time, his toolkit banging against his leg. The alarm was building wide, which meant whatever was happening was serious enough to trigger the central system. He emerged into the main lobby to find controlled chaos. People streaming toward exits, Carl and the other security guards trying to maintain order, and somewhere above, the investors and executives who'd been so close to closing the deal. Vincent appeared next to him, his face furious and frightened in equal measure. Please tell me this isn't your power system failing. It's not. Where's the fire? 3rd floor mechanical room. Vincent grabbed his arm. Adrian, that's where... I know what's there. He was already moving. The 3rd floor mechanical room housed auxiliary cooling systems, backup power supplies, and a small server farm that handled building security. It was also where Adrian had made some of his riskiest modifications to keep the power running. He hit the 3rd floor and immediately smelled smoke. The mechanical room door was warm to the touch. Adrian hesitated for maybe half a second, then opened it anyway. Smoke billowed out, gray and acrid. Through the haze, he could see flames climbing the wall near the main cable trunk. Electrical fire. The worst kind. His modifications hadn't caused this, but they'd created the conditions where this could happen. Someone pushed past him carrying a fire extinguisher. Lena. "What are you doing?" Adrian shouted over the alarm. "Helping!" She pulled the pin and aimed the extinguisher at the base of the flames. Adrian wanted to argue, wanted to tell her to get out, that this was his problem to fix. Instead, he grabbed the second extinguisher from the hallway and joined her. They worked together in the smoke, Adrian directing where to spray, Lena following his lead without question. The fire fought back, fed by electrical current that was still flowing through damaged systems. Adrian knew he should shut down power to this room, knew it was the safe thing to do. But shutting down power meant killing the presentation upstairs, so he fought the fire instead. It took 5 minutes that felt like hours. When the last flame finally died, Adrian and Lena stood in a room full of smoking wreckage, both of them coughing, both of them covered in chemical residue from the extinguishers. "Is it out?" Lena managed between coughs. Adrian checked the wall, checked the cables, checked every surface that had been burning. "Yeah, it's out." "Did we lose power?" He looked at the damaged systems, did quick mental calculations. "Not yet. But we will if I don't patch this." "How long?" "How long until the power dies?" "Maybe 20 minutes. He pulled out his toolkit. "How long to patch it?" 30 minutes. Minimum. Lena's face fell. "The presentation ends in 25. Then I guess I need to work faster." She helped him without being asked, holding his flashlight, handing him tools, learning the names of things she'd never needed to know before. Adrian worked with the intensity of someone who'd already lost one important thing tonight and wasn't willing to lose another. 15 minutes later, he had power restored through an even more precarious series of connections. The system was now running on what amounted to thoughts and prayers. But it was running. His phone rang. He didn't recognize the number. "Adrian Cole, this is Principal Ramirez from Mia's school." His heart stopped. "Is she okay?" "She's fine, but she's also very upset, and I think it would help if you could talk to her." "I'm in the middle of an emergency at work. I understand, but she's been crying for 20 minutes and—" A pause. "Mr. Cole, I know you're a single father. I know you're doing your best, but that little girl needs to hear your voice right now." He closed his eyes. The building hummed around him, 300 people depending on systems he'd held together with desperation and skill. Upstairs, investors were probably shaking hands, signing preliminary agreements, securing futures. Down here, his daughter was crying. "Put her on," he said. Static. Then a small, broken voice. "Dad? Pay me a bug." "You weren't there." "I know, I'm sorry." "You promised." "I did, and I broke that promise. He stopped, searching for words that wouldn't be lies or excuses. There was an emergency at work. The building lost power and people needed help, and I was the only one who could fix it. "People always need you." Her voice was so small. "More than I do." That broke something in his chest. "That's not true. Nobody needs me more than you." "Then why weren't you there?" "Because I made a choice. Because sometimes being a good father means providing even when it costs everything. Because I thought I could have both, and I was wrong. Because I made a mistake," he said instead. "Because I thought I had to choose between keeping my promise to you and keeping 300 people from losing their jobs, and I chose wrong." Silence on the other end. "Mia, you still there?" Ms. Ramirez recorded my presentation. Her voice had changed, still hurt, but something else underneath. "Do you want to see it?" "More than anything." "Will you watch it tonight?" "The second I get home." "Promise?" He looked at the smoking ruins around him, the jury-rigged power system, the building he'd saved at the cost of being where he should have been. "Yeah," he said. "I promise." "Okay." A pause. "I won the second place, Dad." Pride and regret hit him simultaneously. "That's amazing, Mia. I'm so proud of you." "I wish you'd been there to see it." "Me too, Bug." "Me too." They talked for another minute, awkward and painful and necessary. When Principal Ramirez came back on the line, she said quietly, She'll be okay, Mr. Cole. But maybe next time. There won't be a next time, he said, and meant it. He hung up. Lena was watching him from across the ruined mechanical room, her expression unreadable. Your daughter? She asked. Yeah. You missed something important. Second place in the robotics showcase. I'm sorry. He put his phone away, picked up his toolkit. Don't be. I made my choice. Did you, though? She stepped closer. Or did Vincent and I and everyone upstairs make it for you? What's that supposed to mean? It means we put you in an impossible situation and then acted like you had a real choice. Her voice had an edge he hadn't heard before. It means we took advantage of the fact that you're the kind of person who can't walk away when people need help. Nobody put a gun to my head. Didn't they? She gestured at the building around them. Your job? 300 people's jobs? The company's entire future? That's not a choice, Adrian. That's extortion dressed up as responsibility. He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, that he'd made a free decision, that he owned this. But standing in a room full of smoke and damaged systems, knowing his daughter was crying across town, he couldn't make himself believe it. The presentation's probably wrapping up, he said instead. You should get back upstairs. Adrian, I need to monitor the power for another 15 minutes. Make sure everything's stable. Then I'm going home. Lena studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded and left. Adrian sat down on the floor next to his makeshift power distribution panel, watching gauges that showed systems holding together through pure stubbornness. His phone buzzed with a message from Mia, a video file, her presentation, sent with love from a daughter who still believed in him even when he didn't deserve it. He didn't watch it, not yet. He just sat in the ruins of his choices and waited for someone else's success to be secure enough that he could finally go home. The power held. His promise didn't. And somewhere in the distance, smoke still drifted from cables that should never have been asked to carry so much weight. The power held until 10:17 p.m., 17 minutes longer than it needed to. Adrian watched the gauges drop back to safe levels as the executive suite finally went dark, the presentation over, the investors presumably satisfied. He'd done what they'd asked, kept everything running, saved the day. He felt like he'd lost a war. The drive home took 40 minutes through light traffic, his truck's engine the only sound besides the occasional buzz of his phone. He didn't check the messages. Didn't need to. He knew what they'd say, Vincent thanking him, Lena checking if he was okay, Carl asking about overtime paperwork. The usual noise that came after pulling off the impossible. None of it mattered as much as the video file waiting on his phone. Mia was asleep when he got home, curled up on the couch with her robotics binder still open on her lap. She'd waited up as long as she could. The babysitter, Mrs. Chen from downstairs, looked up from her knitting with an expression that managed to be both sympathetic and judgmental. She cried herself out around 9, Mrs. Chen said quietly. Kept saying you'd come home and watch the video with her. Emergency at work. I couldn't... I know. Her tone said she'd heard it before. She's a good girl, Adrian. Resilient. But resilient isn't the same as unbreakable. He paid her, added an extra 20 he couldn't really afford, and waited until she'd left before sitting down next to his daughter. Mia stirred but didn't wake. He carefully closed her binder, noting the sketches in the margins, gear ratios and circuit diagrams drawn with the same concentration her mother used to have, the same concentration he'd inherited and passed along. He carried Mia to her bedroom, tucked her in, and sat on the edge of her bed watching her sleep. She looked peaceful now, the hurt smoothed away by exhaustion. Tomorrow she'd wake up and remember, and they'd have to talk about broken promises and impossible choices, and he'd try to explain things that didn't have good explanations. But tonight, she could just sleep. Adrian pulled out his phone and finally watched the video. It was shaky, filmed on a phone by someone in the audience, but he could see Mia clearly enough. She stood at a table with her robot, a small wheeled device designed to navigate obstacle courses, and explained its programming with the kind of enthusiasm that made his chest hurt. She demonstrated how it used sensors to detect barriers, how she'd coded it to make decisions, how she'd solved the problem of it tipping over on uneven surfaces. She was brilliant, confident, exactly the kind of person her mother had hoped she'd become. And he'd missed it. The video ended with applause and Mia smiling, holding her second-place ribbon, looking off to the side like she was searching for someone in the crowd. looking for him. Adrian set the phone down and put his head in his hands. He stayed like that for a long time. When he finally went to his own room, it was past midnight. Sleep didn't come easy. He lay there thinking about damaged relay switches and sabotage, about the fire that had nearly taken out the building, about choices that felt less like choices and more like traps he'd walked into willingly. Someone had deliberately tried to destroy Halcyon Technologies tonight. Someone who knew the building's systems, who had access to restricted areas, who understood exactly when to strike for maximum damage. Someone he probably knew. That thought kept him awake until 3 in the morning. The next day started with a text from Vincent at 6:47 a.m. Need to see you. My office, 9 a.m. Adrian made breakfast for Mia, pancakes shaped like robots, a peace offering that felt inadequate, and watched her eat in silence. She wasn't angry, which somehow made it worse. She was just quiet, withdrawn in a way that reminded him too much of the months after her mother died. I watched your video last night, he said finally, after you fell asleep. She didn't look up from her pancakes. Okay, your robot is incredible, Mia. The sensor integration, the pathfinding algorithm, that's college-level work. Miss Ramirez said the same thing. I'm really sorry I wasn't there. She set down her fork. You said that already. I know, but Dad. She looked at him then, and her eyes were older than 9 years should allow. It's okay. I know your job is important. You're more important. Then why weren't you there? It was the same question from last night, but it hit differently in daylight. Less accusatory, more genuinely confused, like she really wanted to understand the math that made her worth less than a building full of strangers. Because I made a mistake, Adrian said. Because I thought I had to save everyone, and I forgot that you needed saving too. I didn't need saving, I just needed you to show up. The simplicity of it, the basic, essential truth that he'd complicated into something impossible, made him feel like the worst kind of fool. You're right, he said. I'm sorry. Mia picked up her fork again. The science fair is in 3 weeks. Regional competition. Ms. Ramirez says I'm good enough to qualify. You'll definitely qualify. Will you come? The question hung between them, weighted with every broken promise that came before. Yes, Adrian said. Even if the building catches fire, even if every system in the city fails, I'll be there. She studied his face, trying to decide if she could believe him. Promise? Promise. She went back to her pancakes, and Adrian pretended not to notice the small smile she was trying to hide. He dropped her at school and drove to Halcyon Technologies with a knot in his stomach that had nothing to do with missing breakfast. Vincent's office was on the 42nd floor, all glass and chrome and expensive furniture that looked uncomfortable on purpose. Adrian had never been summoned there before. Maintenance workers got yelled at in hallways and mechanical rooms, not executive suites. The assistant, a young man whose nameplate said Derek, looked up when Adrian entered. Mr. Cole, Mr. Marks is expecting you. Go right in. The office was bigger than Adrian's entire apartment. Vincent sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Adrian's truck, and Lena stood by the window looking out at the city. They both turned when he entered. Adrian? Vincent gestured to a chair. Sit. He sat. Lena stayed by the window. I'll get right to it, Vincent said. The presentation went perfectly. The investors were impressed. The Aurora project is moving forward with full funding, and we're looking at a company valuation that's triple what we projected 6 months ago. That's good news, sir. It is. And it wouldn't have happened without you. Vincent leaned forward. I've been with this company for 15 years, Adrian. I've seen people come and go, watched careers rise and fall. Last night you did something I've rarely seen. You saved us when everyone else had given up. Adrian didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Which is why I'm offering you a position in operations. Department supervisor level, 40% salary increase, full benefits package. You'd oversee all building systems, manage a team of 6 technicians, report directly to Jennifer Reeves. The offer hung in the air like smoke. 40% increase? Real benefits. A title that meant something. Everything he'd worked toward for 6 years, handed to him on a silver platter. There's a catch, isn't there? Adrian said. Vincent smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Not a catch, a reality. The position requires significant time commitment. We're expanding to 2 new facilities over the next year, And we'll need someone who can be available for emergencies, travel to satellite offices, put in the hours necessary to miss my daughter's life. Silence. Lena turned from the window. Vincent, maybe we should… No, he's right. Vincent's smile faded. The job requires sacrifice. That's the nature of leadership. But the compensation reflects that, and frankly, you've already proven you can handle the pressure. By choosing work over my kid? By making the hard choice when it mattered. Vincent's voice hardened. 300 people kept their jobs because of what you did last night, Adrian. That's not nothing. That's the kind of impact that comes with responsibility. Adrian thought about Mia's face in the video, searching the crowd for him. Thought about Mrs. Chen's words. Resilient isn't the same as unbreakable. I need to think about it, he said. Of course. Take the weekend. Vincent stood, extending his hand. But don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't wait. Adrian shook his hand and left, feeling Lena's eyes on him the whole way out. She caught up with him at the elevator. Don't do it, he turned. What? Don't take the job. She kept her voice low, checking that Derek wasn't listening. I've seen what it does to people. The hours, the pressure, the constant emergencies that aren't really emergencies but get treated like they are. It'll eat you alive. 40% raise, Lena. Do you know what that means for someone like me? I know what it costs, and it's not worth it. The elevator arrived. Adrian stepped in, but Lena followed. Why do you care? He asked as the doors closed. Because I've watched this company destroy good people by convincing them that sacrifice equals value. She hit the button for the basement level. And because last night I saw what it cost you, and I'm not okay with pretending that was a fair trade. Nobody forced me to stay. Didn't they? It was the same thing she'd said last night, but this time there was anger underneath. You knew if you left, the presentation failed. You knew 300 jobs depended on you. That's not a choice, Adrian. That's a hostage situation. The elevator descended in silence. I found something, she said finally, about the sabotage. That got his attention. What? Security footage from the mechanical room, from 2 days ago. She pulled out her phone, showed him a grainy video of someone in a maintenance uniform entering the room at 2 a.m. Recognize them? Adrian watched the figure move through the footage with practiced efficiency, heading straight for the relay switch he'd found damaged. The person's face was obscured by a cap, but their gait, their posture… That's not one of my guys, he said. No, it's Marcus Vega. The name meant nothing to him. Who? Senior VP of Technology Integration. He's been with the company for 8 years. Lena's voice was tight. And he's been quietly shorting Halcyon stock for the past 6 months. The pieces started fitting together. He wanted the presentation to fail. Wanted the whole company to tank so he could buy it back cheap. Classic corporate sabotage. She put her phone away. I brought this to Vincent this morning, before you arrived. What did he say? He thanked me for the information and told me he'd handle it internally. Her laugh was bitter. Which means Marcus will get a quiet severance package and a recommendation letter, and everyone will pretend it never happened. That's insane. That's business. The elevator reached the basement. Vincent can't afford a scandal right now, not with the Aurora funding at stake. So Marcus gets away with it, you get offered a promotion that'll destroy your life, and I get to watch it happen while pretending it's all fine. The doors opened. Adrian didn't move. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Lena met his eyes. Because you deserve to know what you're walking into, and because… She hesitated. Because someone should have warned me before I made the same mistakes you're about to make. She stepped out of the elevator. Adrian followed. What mistakes? 3 years ago, I was you. Different job, same situation. My mom was dying, hospice care, maybe 2 months left, and I got offered a promotion that required me to move to New York for 6 months to open a new office. Lena's voice was steady, but her hands weren't. I took it, told myself she'd understand, that I'd visit on weekends, that this was my shot at the career I'd worked for. Lena, she died while I was in a board meeting, heart attack, sudden, no warning. My sister called me 15 times before I finally picked up. She looked at him. I got back on a red-eye, made it to the hospital 3 hours after she was gone, and the first thing I thought was that I'd made a terrible trade. Adrian didn't know what to say. The promotion was worth it, career-wise. I'm here, aren't I? On track for VP before I'm 35. But I'd give it all back for one more conversation with my mom, for the chance to have been there when it mattered. She wiped her eyes quickly, angry at the tears. So when I see you making the same choice, trading presence for success, I can't just stand by and pretend it's fine. They stood in the dim basement hallway, the building humming around them, both of them carrying the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. I'm sorry about your mom, Adrian said. Me too. She took a breath, pulled herself together. Look, I'm not saying turn down the promotion. I'm just saying make sure you understand the real price tag. And if I need the money, then you need the money. But don't lie to yourself about what you're sacrificing to get it. She left him standing there, alone with his thoughts and the ghosts of broken promises. Adrian spent the rest of the day working through his normal routine, checking systems, running diagnostics, fixing the small problems before they became big ones. Carl found him around noon, clipboard in hand. You're a celebrity, Carl said. Everybody's talking about last night. Vincent's secretary even learned your name. Lucky me. You okay, man? You look like hell. Didn't sleep much. Carl studied him. This about the job offer? Word traveled fast. How'd you know? Because Vincent doesn't keep secrets well, and Derek's got a big mouth. He leaned against the wall. You gonna take it? I don't know. Want my advice? Not really. Carl gave it anyway. Take the money. I've been working security for 15 years, watched guys turn down promotions because they thought they'd have more time later. You know what happened? They got older, got stuck, got bitter. Meanwhile, the guys who took the promotions, they got retirement funds and college savings and houses that didn't leak when it rained. They also got divorced and estranged from their kids. Some of them, sure. But some of them figured out the balance, made it work. Carl's voice softened. Your daughter's 9, right? In 9 more years, she's off to college anyway. You gonna spend those 9 years scraping by in a basement, or you gonna give her opportunities you never had? It was a good argument, practical, sensible, exactly the kind of logic that made bad decisions feel justified. I'll think about it, Adrian said. He thought about it through the afternoon, through his drive to pick up Mia from school, through dinner and homework and the evening routine. He thought about it while Mia showed him improvements she wanted to make to her robot, explaining gear ratios and torque calculations with enthusiasm that made him proud and sad in equal measure. She was smart, brilliant even, the kind of smart that deserved good schools and opportunities, and a future that wasn't limited by money, the kind of smart that 40% more salary could help support. After Mia went to bed, Adrian pulled out his phone and looked at the video again, watched his daughter searching the crowd, searching for him, searching for the one person who'd promised to be there. His phone buzzed. A text from Lena. Whatever you decide, make sure it's really your choice. Not Vincent's, not mine. Yours. He stared at the message for a long time. Then he opened a new text to Vincent. Need more time to think. Can we talk Monday? The response came back immediately. Of course, take the weekend. But Adrian, don't overthink this. Sometimes the right choice is the one that scares you most. Adrian set the phone down and went to the kitchen, poured himself a drink he didn't really want, and stood at the window watching the city lights. Somewhere out there, Marcus Vega was probably sleeping easy. His sabotage attempt failed, but his consequences minimal. Vincent was probably already planning the next emergency, the next crisis that would require someone to sacrifice their life for the company's survival. And Lena was probably alone in her apartment, thinking about a mother she'd traded for a promotion that hadn't filled the hole it left behind. The weekend passed too quickly. Mia spent Saturday working on a robot, making adjustments and improvements, occasionally asking Adrian for help with technical problems he was surprised she hadn't already solved herself. They didn't talk about the showcase or the missed promises, just worked together in comfortable silence, the way they used to when she was younger and the world was simpler. Sunday, they went to the park. Mia brought her robot and tested it on the uneven terrain, making notes in her binder about sensor recalibration and weight distribution. Adrian watched her work with the kind of focus that reminded him why he'd stayed at Halcyon in the first place. To provide for her, to give her stability, to make sure she never had to worry about money the way he had growing up. But stability wasn't the same as presence, and money didn't fill the seats at robotics showcases. Dad? Mia looked up from her notes. Can I ask you something? Anything. If you could do Thursday night over again, would you make the same choice? The question hit harder than it should have. Honestly? Honestly. He thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know. I wanted to be at your showcase, Mia, more than anything, but I also knew that if I left, a lot of people would get hurt. So you picked them over me. I picked trying to help everyone, which meant I ended up helping nobody the way they needed. She was quiet for a moment, processing. Miss Ramirez says sometimes there aren't good choices, just less bad ones. Miss Ramirez is smart. Yeah. Mia went back to her notes. I'm still mad at you, though. I know. But I still love you. I know that, too. They stayed at the park until the sun started setting, not talking about the promotion or the future or the choices that were coming. Just a father and daughter and a robot that could navigate obstacles better than either of them. Monday morning arrived with another text from Vincent. My office, 10 a.m. Bring your answer. Adrian drove to work in silence, his decision made but feeling no better for it. He parked in his usual spot, took the elevator to the 42nd floor, and walked past Derek into Vincent's office without waiting to be announced. Vincent looked up from his computer, surprised. Adrian, you're early. I'm turning down the promotion. Silence. Vincent's expression went from surprised to confused to something harder. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Do you have any idea how rare this opportunity is? How many people would kill for this shot? Then give it to one of them. Adrian kept his voice steady. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Marks. Really. But I can't take a job that requires me to choose between my career and my daughter. Not again. Vincent stood, his face darkening. This is about Thursday night. This is about every night, every weekend, every emergency that isn't really an emergency but gets treated like one anyway. Adrian met his eyes. I'm good at my job. I know these systems better than anyone, but that doesn't mean I owe you my entire life. Nobody's asking for your entire life. Yes, you are. That's exactly what you're asking for. Adrian's voice rose despite himself. You're asking me to be available whenever you need me, to drop everything when you call, to put the company first and my family second. And you're dressing it up as opportunity and leadership and all the other words that make it sound noble instead of exploitative. Vincent's jaw tightened. I see Lena's been talking to you. This isn't about Lena. This is about me finally understanding what I'm worth and what I'm not willing to trade for a paycheck. They stared at each other across the expensive desk, two men who'd never really seen each other until now. If you turn this down, Vincent said quietly, there won't be another offer. You'll stay exactly where you are for as long as you work here. I know. You'll watch other people get promoted past you. I know that too. And you're okay with that? Adrian thought about Mia's face in the video, about the science fair in 3 weeks, about 9 more years of moments he'd never get back if he missed them. Yeah, he said. I'm okay with that. Vincent sat back down, his expression unreadable. Then I guess we're done here. Adrian turned to leave. Adrian, Vincent's voice stopped him at the door. For what it's worth, I respect your decision, even if I think it's wrong. For what it's worth, sir, I hope I never understand why you think it's wrong. He left the office, took the elevator down to the basement, and went back to work. Lena found him around lunch, sitting in the mechanical room eating a sandwich and running system diagnostics. I heard, she said. News travels fast. Vincent's assistant has a bigger mouth than the Grand Canyon. She sat down next to him on the floor, uninvited. How do you feel? Terrified. Relieved. Broke. He took a bite of his sandwich. Depends on the minute. That sounds about right. She was quiet for a moment. I'm proud of you. For turning down money I desperately need. For knowing the difference between a price and a cost. They sat in the humming mechanical room, two people who'd made different choices and were trying to live with the consequences. I'm going to start looking for other jobs, Adrian said. Something with normal hours and better pay than this. Something that doesn't require me to save the world every time a breaker trips. Good. You deserve that. In the meantime, I'm stuck here. We're all stuck somewhere. Lena stood, brushed off her skirt. but at least you're stuck with your eyes open. She left him there, and Adrian finished his sandwich while watching gauges that showed systems running smooth and normal. No emergencies, no sabotage, just the regular rhythm of a building that would keep standing whether he sacrificed his life for it or not. His phone buzzed. A text from Mia. Ms. Ramirez says I definitely qualified for regionals. It's 3 weeks from Saturday. Will you come? Adrian typed back. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Promise. This time, he meant it. This time, he'd make sure nothing got in the way, even if it meant walking away from everything he'd built to get there. The building felt different after that. Not physically. The system still hummed the same way. The elevators still rattled on the descent. The fluorescent lights in the basement still flickered with the exact timing Adrian had memorized years ago. But something had shifted, like a bone set wrong that finally popped back into place. He'd chosen something for himself instead of letting circumstances choose for him. And even though his bank account disagreed with the decision, walking through those halls didn't feel like slow suffocation anymore. The first week after turning down Vincent's offer was quiet. Too quiet. Adrian kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. A reduction in hours, a sudden write-up for some invented infraction, the corporate equivalent of punishment for not playing along. But nothing came. He showed up, did his job, went home to Mia at reasonable hours for the first time in months. It felt strange, almost wrong. You're home early again, Mia said on Wednesday evening, looking up from her homework with suspicion. Did you get fired? No, just keeping normal hours. Since when do you keep normal hours? Since now. He dropped his keys on the counter, started pulling out ingredients for dinner. How was school? Fine. We're doing fractions in math, and I already know all of it because of the gear ratios for my robot. She watched him move around the kitchen. Are you okay? Why wouldn't I be? Because you've been weird since last week. Like, present but distracted. Mrs. Chen says you're probably having a midlife crisis. Adrian stopped chopping onions. You talked to Mrs. Chen about me? She talks to me about you. There's a difference. Mia spun her pencil between her fingers. She thinks you should start dating again. Mrs. Chen should mind her own business. That's what I said. But she said someone needs to look after you since Mom's not here to do it. The words came out casual, but Adrian heard the hitch underneath. Mia didn't talk about her mother often. When she did, it was usually oblique, glancing blows instead of direct hits. He set down the knife and sat across from her at the table. I'm fine, Mia. Really. I'm just trying to figure some things out. Like what? Like whether I've been doing this whole parenting thing the right way. She considered that. You feed me and don't yell that much and let me build robots in the living room. Seems pretty good to me. The bar's not that high, huh? I mean, Tommy Brecker's dad forgot to pick him up from soccer practice last week. And Sarah Lynn's parents are getting divorced because her mom caught her dad with someone from his office. She went back to her homework. So yeah, you're doing okay. It was the most 9-year-old form of reassurance possible, and it made Adrian's chest tight in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Thanks, Bug. You're welcome. Can we have tacos? They had tacos. Thursday, Adrian got called up to the 23rd floor to fix a malfunctioning HVAC unit. The office belonged to the marketing department, all open floor plans and standing desks and motivational posters that said things like fail forward and disrupt everything. He found the problem in 10 minutes, a sensor gone bad, easy fix, and was packing up his tools when someone cleared their throat behind him. He turned to find Marcus Vega standing there. Adrian had looked up his photo after Lena told him about the sabotage. But seeing him in person was different. Marcus was maybe 45, fit in the way that came from expensive gym memberships, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Adrian's monthly rent. He had the kind of face that was hard to read, professionally pleasant, practiced neutrality. Adrian Cole, Marcus said, like he was testing the name. We haven't officially met. Marcus Vega. He extended his hand. Adrian looked at it for a long moment before shaking. I know who you are. I imagine you do. Marcus smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. I wanted to thank you personally for your work last week. The power restoration during the Aurora presentation, very impressive. Just doing my job. Most people's job description doesn't include risking their life to prevent an electrical fire. Adrian said nothing. Marcus leaned against a desk, casual. I also heard you turned down Vincent's promotion offer. That surprised me. It was a generous package. Not generous enough. Ah, well, everyone has their price point. He studied Adrian with an expression that was probably meant to be friendly, but landed somewhere closer to predatory. I respect a man who knows his worth, even if I think he's undervaluing himself. Is there something you need, Mr. Vega? Because I've got 3 more maintenance requests to get through before end of day. Direct. I like that. Marcus straightened. Actually, yes. I'm putting together a team for a new venture. Technology infrastructure consulting for mid-sized companies looking to upgrade their systems. I need someone who understands electrical and mechanical integration at a practical level. Someone who can walk into a building and diagnose problems other people miss. Adrian stared at him. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you an opportunity. Better pay than what you're making now, actual respect for your expertise, and most importantly, flexible hours. You'd set your own schedule, take the projects you want, turn down the ones you don't. Marcus pulled out a business card. Think about it. Adrian didn't take the card. You sabotaged this building. Marcus's expression didn't change. I'm sorry? The relay switch. The power failure during the Aurora presentation. That was you. That's a serious accusation. There's security footage. Is there? Marcus set the business card on the desk between them. Interesting. I wonder why Vincent hasn't called the police then. Or why I'm still employed here. Or why you're the one in the basement fixing HVAC units while I'm upstairs planning my next company. The casual admission of it, not even a denial, just the confident acknowledgement that consequences didn't apply to him, made Adrian's jaw clench. I'm not interested in your opportunity. Because you think I'm unethical? Marcus laughed. Adrian, I tried to tank one presentation to tank one company's valuation so I could profit off the collapse. That's just capitalism. What do you think happens in this building every day? Vincent builds success on the backs of people like you, pays you a fraction of what you're worth, and convinces you that loyalty matters more than leverage. He tapped the business card. I'm at least honest about the transaction. Get out of my way. Marcus didn't move. One more thing. Lena Hart. She's sharp, ambitious, probably going places in this company, but she's also the one who gave Vincent that security footage, which means she's willing to burn bridges when it's convenient. He leaned closer. Watch yourself around her. People who weaponize information against others don't suddenly develop loyalty when it's your turn in the crosshairs. Adrian picked up his toolkit. Move. Marcus stepped aside, still smiling. The offer stands. When you realize Vincent's never going to value you the way you deserve, give me a call. Adrian walked away without responding, his hands shaking with anger he couldn't quite name. He took the stairs down instead of the elevator, needing the physical exertion to burn off the fury that came from being right about someone and helpless to do anything about it. He found Lena in the cafeteria an hour later, eating a salad and reading something on her tablet. She looked up when he approached. You look like you want to hit something, she said. Marcus Vega just offered me a job. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. He what? Adrian sat down uninvited and told her everything. The confrontation, the job offer, the casual admission of sabotage, the warning about Lena herself. She listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from surprise to anger to something harder to read. He's trying to buy your silence, she said finally. I know. Or he's setting you up. Get you on his payroll, then use you as a scapegoat if anything goes wrong with his next scheme. I know that too. Lena set down her fork. Did you tell Vincent? Not yet. Wanted to talk to you first. He hesitated. Marcus said you're the one who gave Vincent the security footage. I am. And Vincent did nothing with it. He did nothing I can see. Doesn't mean he's doing nothing. She met his eyes. You don't trust me. I don't know you well enough to trust you. Fair. She picked up her fork again, stabbed at a piece of lettuce with more force than necessary. For what it's worth, I gave Vincent that footage because I thought he'd actually do something with it. Fire Marcus, press charges, something. Instead, Marcus is still here making job offers, and I look like an idiot. Or you look like someone who tried to do the right thing and got blocked by someone more powerful. Is there a difference? Adrian thought about that. Probably not in this building. They sat in silence for a moment, the cafeteria noise humming around them, the clatter of trays, the hum of conversation, the normal soundtrack of people who weren't dealing with sabotage and consequences. "I'm going to tell Vincent about the job offer," Adrian said. "Not because I think he'll do anything, just so it's on record." "Good. And Adrian?" Lena's voice was quieter now. "I'm sorry Marcus tried to poison the well about me. For what it's worth, I'm not trying to weaponize anything. I'm just trying to figure out how to work in a place where doing the right thing gets punished and doing the wrong thing gets rewarded." "Yeah, me too." He went back to work, finished his maintenance requests, and stopped by Vincent's office at 5:30. Derek had already left for the day, so Adrian knocked directly on the door. "Come in." Vincent looked tired, older than he had a week ago. The Aurora success hadn't rejuvenated him the way it probably should have. He just looked worn down. "Adrian, what can I do for you?" Adrian told him about Marcus, the job offer, the admission, all of it. Vincent listened with an expression that gave away nothing, his hands folded on his desk like he was praying or trying to keep them from shaking. "Thank you for telling me," Vincent said when Adrian finished. "That's it? Thank you? What would you like me to say?" "I'd like you to explain why a man who tried to destroy this company is still walking around making job offers instead of sitting in a jail cell." Vincent was quiet for a long moment. "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it." "I can't. Not without jeopardizing things you don't have clearance to know about." Adrian stood. "Then I guess we're done here." "Adrian, wait." Vincent rubbed his eyes. "Marcus Vega is well connected. His father sits on the board of directors for our parent company. His brother-in-law is a federal prosecutor. His wife's family owns enough stock in Halcyon that forcing him out means opening the company to a hostile takeover." "So you're protecting him?" "I'm protecting 300 jobs. There's a difference." "Is there?" Adrian heard himself echo Lena's words from earlier. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're letting a criminal walk free because it's more convenient than holding him accountable." Vincent's jaw tightened. "You think I like this? You think I enjoy knowing someone tried to sabotage everything I've built and I can't do anything about it without losing everything anyway? I think you're making the same choice you asked me to make last week, trading what's right for what's convenient." "That's not fair." "Neither's any of this." Adrian headed for the door. "But thanks for confirming that I made the right decision turning down your promotion. At least I can sleep at night." He left Vincent sitting there and took the elevator back down to the basement, his hand still shaking. Not with anger anymore. With something closer to grief. For the job he'd thought he had, for the company he'd thought he worked for the illusion that any of this was fair or just or worth the sacrifices he'd been making. Mia was already home when he got there, Mrs. Chen having picked her up from school. She had her robot spread out on the living room floor, surrounded by tools and wires and the organized chaos that came with improvement projects. "Hey, Dad, look." She held up a small circuit board. "I figured out how to add a second sensor array so it can detect obstacles from multiple angles simultaneously." Adrian sat down on the floor next to her, let the building and Marcus and Vincent and all of it fade into background noise. "Show me how it works." She showed him, her voice bright with enthusiasm. And for 30 minutes, Adrian forgot about everything except watching his daughter explain sensor integration with the kind of passion that made all his choices feel justified. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange rhythm. Adrian worked his regular hours, went home to Mia, helped with homework and robot improvements, and tried not to think about the fact that he'd burned every bridge in the building without having another job lined up. He sent out applications in the evenings, facilities management positions at other companies, consulting work, anything that paid decent and didn't require him to sacrifice his humanity. Nothing came back. The job market wasn't kind to maintenance workers pushing 40 with gaps in their resume and a reputation for turning down promotions. His savings account was thin enough to see through, and every week that passed without an offer made the knot in his stomach tighter. But Mia's science fair was in 4 days, and he'd promised to be there, and that promise mattered more than his growing financial panic. Lena started showing up in the mechanical room during lunch. Not every day, but often enough that Adrian stopped being surprised when she appeared with her sad desk salad and questions about his job search. "Anything?" she asked on Wednesday, the week before the science fair. 3 rejections and a suspicious offer from a company that might be a pyramid scheme. Rough. Yeah, He was rewiring a control panel, half his attention on the work and half on the conversation. You ever think about leaving? Halcyon? Every day? Why don't you? She was quiet for a long moment. Because I keep thinking the next promotion will be the one that makes it worth it. That I'll finally get enough power to change things, to make this place better, to fix all the broken systems that grind people down. She laughed, bitter. It's a nice fantasy. But you don't believe it anymore. I believe it enough to stay, which probably makes me part of the problem. Adrian finished the wiring, tested the connection. You gave Vincent evidence of a crime and he buried it. You tried to warn me about the promotion. You've been more honest with me in 2 weeks than most people are in years. He closed the panel. Whatever you are, you're not the problem. Then what am I? Someone trying to survive a system that wasn't built for people like us. People like us? People who think loyalty should go both ways. That work should matter. That showing up and doing your job well should mean something beyond being exploited until you're used up. Lena picked at her salad. You're angrier than you were 2 weeks ago. I'm clearer than I was 2 weeks ago. There's a difference. Is there? She was using his words against him now, but gently. Because from where I'm sitting, clarity and anger look pretty similar. Maybe they are. He packed up his tools. Maybe that's the only rational response to all this. Thursday brought another complication. Adrian's truck started making a sound that promised expensive repairs. His landlord left a message about raising rent. And Mia came home from school with a permission slip for a summer robotics camp that cost more than Adrian made in a week. You don't have to say yes, Mia said, watching him read the form. I know money's tight. The fact that his 9-year-old daughter was managing his expectations about money made him want to punch something. Let me think about it, okay? Okay. She didn't push, which somehow made it worse. That night, after Mia went to bed, Adrian sat at his kitchen table with a calculator and a spreadsheet and numbers that refused to add up to anything sustainable. Even with his current salary, even with cutting every possible corner, he was 6 months from serious trouble. The truck repairs alone would wipe out what was left in savings. He thought about Marcus's job offer, better pay, flexible hours, actual respect for his expertise. He thought about Vincent's promotion, security, benefits, a future that didn't involve poverty. He thought about all the ways he could compromise his way back to financial stability. Then he thought about Mia's face when he'd missed her showcase, and the promises he'd made, and the person he wanted to be versus the person circumstances kept trying to force him to become. His phone buzzed, a text from Lena. Can't sleep either. How'd you know? Because I've been where you are. The 2 a.m. math that doesn't work no matter how many times you run it. Adrian stared at his spreadsheet. Any advice? Yeah. Don't make permanent decisions based on temporary panic, and don't let them convince you that being broke is worse than being broken. Easy to say when you're not the one 6 months from eviction. I was 8 months from eviction when I took the New York promotion. Thought the money would save me. It just made the hole I was digging more expensive. He didn't know what to say to that. Get some sleep, Lena sent. Tomorrow's problems are still tomorrow's problems in the morning. Adrian tried. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by anxiety and calculations, and the persistent question of how he'd managed to make so many right choices that added up to such a wrong situation. Friday afternoon, Carl found him in the basement looking at job listings on his phone. You got a minute? Carl asked. Depends. You here to tell me I'm fired? What? No. Why would you be fired? I don't know. Feels like the next logical step in this month. Carl sat down on an overturned bucket. I wanted to apologize. That got Adrian's attention. For what? For telling you to take Vincent's promotion. For acting like money was the only thing that mattered. He stopped, searching for words. My daughter's 32 now, lives across the country, calls me maybe twice a year. You know why? Adrian shook his head. Because when she was growing up, I made the same choices you almost made. Took every promotion, worked every holiday, missed every school play and soccer game and all the little moments that don't seem important until they're gone. Carl's voice was rough. She's successful now, makes good money, has a nice life, and she barely knows me, because I taught her that work matters more than people, and she learned that lesson too well. I see you with your kid. The The way you talk about her, the way you rearranged your whole life when you realized you were messing up. That takes guts. He stood. So I'm sorry for giving you advice that would have turned you into me. You deserve better than that. I don't know if I can afford better than that. Maybe not right now, but you will. Carl headed for the door, then stopped. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you for knowing the difference between a price and a cost. He left Adrian sitting there with those words echoing in his head. Saturday was the science fair. Regional competition, bigger venue, higher stakes. Adrian woke up early, made Mia her favorite breakfast, helped her load the robot and presentation materials into his protesting truck, and drove across town to the convention center with a knot in his stomach that had nothing to do with his daughter's performance. The repairs he couldn't afford, the rent increase he couldn't pay, the summer camp he couldn't provide, all of it pressing down while he tried to focus on being present for this one moment. The convention center was chaos. Kids everywhere, parents setting up displays, judges moving between tables with clipboards. Mia's category was in Hall B, robotics and engineering, surrounded by projects that looked professional enough to make Adrian wonder if he'd accidentally entered his daughter in a college competition. You nervous? He asked while helping her set up. Terrified. She adjusted her robot for the third time. What if it doesn't work? What if I freeze during the presentation? What if... Mia. He put his hands on her shoulders. You've practiced this 100 times. Your robot is brilliant. You're brilliant. Whatever happens, I'm proud of you. Even if I don't place? Even if you come in dead last, which you won't. She took a breath, steadied herself. Okay, I'm ready. Good. I'll be right over there. He pointed to the observation area. Front row. You promise? Promise. He kept that promise. Sat in an uncomfortable folding chair for 3 hours, watching Mia present to judges, demonstrate her robot's capabilities, answer technical questions with confidence that made his chest tight. She was poised, articulate, passionate about her work in a way that reminded him why he'd made all those hard choices. This moment right here, this was what mattered. Between presentations, his phone buzzed constantly. Work emails, job rejection notifications, a text from his landlord about the rent increase timeline. He ignored all of it, put the phone on silent, and focused on his daughter. Lena showed up halfway through, slipping into the seat next to him with a small wave. How'd you know where to find us? Adrian whispered. You mentioned it Monday, Convention Center, Hall B. She watched Mia across the room, talking animatedly with another competitor. She's really good. She is. Gets it from her dad? Gets it from her mom. I'm just the mechanic. She was the engineer. Lena was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry she's not here to see this. Yeah, me too. They sat in companionable silence while the competition continued around them. Adrian still didn't know why Lena had come, what she was doing spending her Saturday watching other people's kids present robots. But he was grateful not to be alone in the crowd of families that made his single-parent status feel more obvious. The judging took forever. Mia came back to sit with them, jittery with nerves, watching the deliberation table like she could influence the outcome through sheer will. You did great, Adrian told her for the 5th time. You have to say that. You're my dad. I'd say it even if I wasn't. You presented like a professional. The girl next to me built a robot that can sort recycling autonomously. Mine just navigates obstacles. Your robot makes real-time decisions based on environmental input and adapts its pathing accordingly. That's advanced AI integration. Lena leaned forward. Don't undersell your work. Mia looked at her, surprised. You understand robotics? I understand enough to know genius when I see it. That got a small smile. The judges finally returned. The head judge, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a clipboard, approached the microphone. Thank you all for your patience. We've reviewed all presentations in the robotics and engineering category, and I'm pleased to announce our winners. Adrian reached over and squeezed Mia's hand. 3rd place went to a kid who'd built a drone that could plant seeds. 2nd place went to the girl with the recycling robot. Mia's face fell with each announcement, disappointment clear even as she clapped politely. And 1st place, with a project that demonstrated exceptional technical skill and innovative problem-solving, goes to Mia Cole for her adaptive navigation system. Time stopped. Mia's mouth fell open. Adrian felt something break loose in his chest, pride and relief and joy hitting all at once. "Go," he said. "Go get your award." Mia ran to the stage, all nervousness forgotten, and accepted a trophy that was nearly as tall as she was. She was beaming, radiant, exactly the person her mother had hoped she'd become. Adrian pulled out his phone and took pictures, capturing every moment, making sure this one wouldn't be lost to broken promises and missed opportunities. When Mia came back, trophy in hand and ribbon around her neck, she threw her arms around Adrian so hard it nearly knocked him over. "I won," she said into his shoulder. "I actually won." "You did." "I'm so proud of you, Bug." She pulled back, eyes shining. "You were here, you promised, and you were actually here. I'll always be here when it matters." "Do you mean that?" He thought about Vincent's promotion, about Marcus's job offer, about all the ways he could sell pieces of himself for financial security. Then he looked at his daughter's face and knew the only answer that mattered. "Yeah," he said, "I mean that." They celebrated with pizza at the restaurant across from the convention center, Mia's trophy taking up half the table, while she recounted every detail of the judging process. Lena stayed, fitting into their small celebration like she'd always been part of it, asking questions about the robot's design and listening to Mia's answers with genuine interest. "So what happens next?" Lena asked. "Is there another level?" "State competition in 8 weeks, Mia said, around a mouthful of pepperoni. "But it's in Sacramento and the registration fee is like $300, plus hotel and travel and everything." She glanced at Adrian. "It's okay if we can't go. Winning regionals is already pretty cool." The casual acceptance in her voice, the way she'd already calculated the cost and decided not to ask, hit Adrian harder than any of Vincent's manipulations or Marcus's offers. His daughter had learned to manage expectations around money because he'd taught her to, unintentionally, through 6 years of careful budgeting and apologetic no's. "We'll figure it out," he said, even though his mental math was already screaming that they wouldn't. Lena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her expression shifted from relaxed to tense in half a second. "I need to take this. Excuse me." She stepped away from the table, and through the restaurant's window, Adrian could see her pacing, gesturing, clearly arguing with whoever was on the other end. "Is she okay?" Mia asked. "I don't know." Lena came back 5 minutes later, her professional mask firmly in place but cracks showing around the edges. "Everything all right?" Adrian asked. "Work emergency. They need me back at the office." She managed a smile for Mia. "Congratulations again. You deserve that win." "Thanks for coming." "Wouldn't have missed it." Lena touched Adrian's shoulder briefly. "We should talk Monday, about some things." She left before he could ask what things. Adrian and Mia finished their pizza, drove home with the trophy carefully buckled into the back seat, and spent the evening uploading photos to her school's parent portal and calling relatives who wanted to hear about the win. By the time Mia finally went to bed, it was past 10, and Adrian's phone was full of congratulatory messages from people he hadn't heard from in months. But nothing from Lena explaining the cryptic comment about Monday. He tried not to worry about it, tried to focus on the fact that today had been a good day, maybe the first genuinely good day in weeks. His daughter had won first place. He'd kept his promise. For once, everything had worked out. Sunday passed quietly. Mia worked on improvements to her robot, already thinking ahead to state competition, despite her earlier resignation about not going. Adrian did laundry and meal prep and tried not to think about his bank account or the truck or any of the mounting problems that lurked just outside his bubble of Saturday's success. Monday morning brought reality crashing back. Adrian's truck finally gave up the ghost in the Halcyon parking lot, the engine making a grinding sound that promised repairs well into 4 figures. He sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, hands on the steering wheel, trying to decide if he wanted to laugh or scream. His phone rang. "Lena." "Where are you?" she asked without preamble. "Parking lot. My truck just died." "Perfect timing. Don't move. I'm coming down." She appeared 3 minutes later, professional clothes and heels clicking across asphalt, looking like she hadn't slept. "Get in my car," she said. "What?" "Get in my car. We need to talk, and I'd rather not do it in a parking lot where anyone could hear us." Adrian grabbed his toolkit and followed her to a sleek sedan that probably cost more than he made in a year. She drove them 2 blocks to a coffee shop, parked, and didn't get out. "Vincent's stepping down," she said. Adrian stared at her. What? The board called an emergency meeting Saturday night. Apparently someone leaked information about Marcus's sabotage to the parent company, along with evidence that Vincent knew and did nothing. He's being forced to resign, effective immediately. Who leaked it? Lena met his eyes. I did. The coffee shop's neon sign buzzed in the silence that followed. Why? Adrian finally asked. Because I was tired of watching people get away with things. Because Marcus tried to destroy this company and face no consequences. Because Vincent put you in an impossible situation and then acted like you were being unreasonable for having limits. She gripped the steering wheel. Because if I have to watch one more good person get ground down by a system that rewards the wrong behavior, I'm going to lose my mind. Lena, you could lose your job over this. I know. Then why? Because some things matter more than job security. She laughed, sharp and bitter, which I realize is hypocritical coming from someone who spent 3 years climbing the ladder by playing it safe. But I watched you turn down a promotion to keep your promises to your daughter, and I watched you refuse a bribe from the man who tried to ruin everything, and I thought, if he can have principles, maybe I should remember mine. Adrian didn't know what to say to that. There's more, Lena continued. The board's doing a full restructure. New leadership, new policies, new approach to work-life balance and employee retention. They're bringing in outside consultants to assess everything, including department structures and management practices. And you're telling me this because? Because one of those consultants is arriving today and wants to meet with you specifically. They've heard about what you did during the Aurora presentation and about you turning down the promotion, and they want to understand why someone that skilled would choose to stay in a basement rather than move up. I didn't choose to stay in a basement. I chose not to sell my soul for a slightly nicer basement. That's exactly what you should tell them. Lena started the car. Meetings at 11 in the main conference room. Wear something without grease stains if you can. She drove them back to Halcyon, dropped Adrian at the entrance, and disappeared into the building before he could ask any more questions. Adrian stood there for a moment, processing. Vincent was gone. The company was restructuring. Someone wanted to interview him about choices that had felt more like survival than strategy. His dead truck sat in the parking lot like a monument to his current financial reality. He went inside. Carl intercepted him before he reached the basement. You heard? About Vincent? Yeah. Hell of a thing. 15 years running this place and gone in a weekend. Carl lowered his voice. Word is Lena Hart's the one who blew the whistle. Where'd you hear that? Derek talks too much when he's stressed. Apparently Lena compiled a whole dossier, security footage, financial records, communication logs, everything. Sent it straight to the board with a letter saying if they didn't act, she'd take it public. Adrian felt something shift in his understanding of Lena. That's career suicide. That's having a backbone. Carl clapped him on the shoulder. Anyway, you've got a meeting at 11. Conference room. Better clean up. The next 2 hours crawled by. Adrian tried to work, running through his usual maintenance checklist, but his mind kept circling back to Vincent's absence and what it meant. The man had run Halcyon for 15 years, had built the Aurora project from nothing, had created jobs and opportunities and growth, even if he'd done it by squeezing every ounce of productivity from people who couldn't afford to say no. And now he was just gone. At 10:45, Adrian changed into the spare shirt he kept in his locker, washed the worst of the grease from his hands, and took the elevator to 42. The main conference room was the same one where he'd faced down panicking executives during the blackout. But the energy was different now, quieter, more uncertain. Derek sat at the reception desk looking shell-shocked, and through the glass walls Adrian could see Lena talking with a woman he didn't recognize. The woman was maybe 50, silver hair cut short, wearing a suit that looked both expensive and practical. She had the kind of presence that made you stand up straighter without being told. Lena waved Adrian in. Adrian Cole, this is Dr. Patricia Owens. She's leading the restructure assessment. Patricia extended her hand. Mr. Cole, thank you for meeting with me. Call me Adrian. Adrian, then. Please, sit. She gestured to a chair and Adrian sat while Lena took a seat across from him. I've been reviewing your employment record. 6 years in facilities management, perfect attendance, 0 safety violations, commendations from multiple department heads for system improvements. Impressive. Thank you. And yet when offered a significant promotion 3 weeks ago, you turned it down. Can you tell me why? Adrian glanced at Lena, who gave a small nod. The position required more time than I was willing to give, he said carefully. I'm a single father. My daughter needs me present, not just providing for her. The promotion would have meant sacrificing one for the other. Patricia made a note on her tablet. Did anyone discuss ways to make the position more compatible with your parenting responsibilities? No, ma'am. Did anyone ask what would need to change for you to accept? No. They just offered you a package that required you to choose between career advancement and family, and when you chose family, they accepted your decision and moved on. That's about right. Patricia set down her tablet. Can I be frank with you, Adrian? Please. I've spent 20 years consulting for tech companies, and I see this pattern everywhere. Talented people get burned out because leadership confuses presence with productivity, long hours with loyalty. They build cultures where the only way up is to sacrifice everything else, and then they wonder why they can't retain their best employees. She leaned forward. What happened to you isn't unique, but your response was. Most people take the promotion and regret it later. You had the clarity to know better. Or I just couldn't afford the cost. Most people can't afford the cost either. They just convince themselves they can until it's too late. Patricia picked up her tablet again. I'm recommending a complete overhaul of Halcyon's management structure. Part of that involves creating positions that recognize expertise without requiring people to sacrifice their lives. Would you be interested in something like that? Adrian's chest tightened. What kind of position? Director of Facilities and Infrastructure. You'd oversee all building systems across Halcyon's 3 locations, manage a team of specialists, and set policy for maintenance and upgrades. But the position would have strict hour limits, mandatory work-life balance protocols, and protection against emergency overreach. I don't understand. You'd get the title, the pay, and the respect your skills deserve. But you'd also get to go home at 5:30 to have dinner with your daughter. And if someone calls you at midnight with an emergency that isn't really an emergency, you'd have institutional backing to tell them no. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. What's the catch? Adrian asked. So, the catch is that I can recommend it, but the final decision belongs to whoever the board hires as Vincent's replacement. They might look at my proposal and decide it's too radical, too expensive, too different from how things have always been done. Patricia smiled. But I'm very good at making convincing arguments. Adrian looked at Lena, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Can I think about it? He asked. Of course. I'll need an answer by Friday. Patricia stood, extending her hand again. Thank you for your time, Adrian, and for your honesty. He shook her hand and left, his head spinning. Lena caught up with him in the hallway. What do you think? I think I don't trust things that sound that good. Smart. But for what it's worth, Patricia has a reputation for actually following through. She doesn't make promises she can't keep. And if the new leadership rejects her proposal, then you're no worse off than you are now. Lena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and sighed. I have to go. Emergency meeting with the board. Apparently they want to discuss my unauthorized disclosure of confidential information. Lena, it's fine. I knew what I was doing when I sent that dossier. She started to walk away, then stopped. Adrian, whatever happens, I don't regret it, just so you know. She disappeared into the elevator, leaving Adrian alone in the hallway with more questions than answers. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Rumors flew through the building faster than electricity through copper wire. Vincent had been escorted out by security. Marcus was being investigated. The board was bringing in a whole new executive team. Nobody knew what was true and what was speculation, but everyone had an opinion. Adrian kept his head down and worked, trying not to think about Patricia's offer or what it might mean. Trying not to hope. His truck was still dead in the parking lot when his shift ended. Carl offered him a ride home, listening to Adrian's truncated explanation of the meeting with Patricia without commenting. You gonna take it? Carl asked when they pulled up to Adrian's apartment. Don't know if it's real enough to take. It's real. Patricia Owens doesn't waste time on hypotheticals. Carl shifted the car into park. But even if it's real, you're scared it'll turn into the same trap Vincent's offer was. Wouldn't you be? Yeah, but I'd also be smart enough to know the difference between a trap and an actual opportunity. He looked at Adrian. Not everything that looks too good to be true is a lie, man. Sometimes good things just happen to good people. Adrian wanted to believe that, wanted it badly enough that the wanting itself felt dangerous. Thanks for the ride, he said instead. Mia was at the kitchen table when he got inside, surrounded by printouts about the state robotics competition. Dad, look. She held up a page. The state competition winner gets a scholarship to a summer engineering program at Stanford. Full ride, room and board, everything. Adrian looked at the information, his tired brain doing the math. If Mia won state, the summer camp problem solved itself. If she didn't, they were still stuck. That's amazing, Bug. I know I said it was okay if we couldn't go to state, but if there's any way... She trailed off, hope and hesitation warring on her face. Adrian sat down next to her. Let me work on it, okay? Don't give up yet. Okay. She went back to her printouts, and Adrian went to his bedroom to stare at his bank account and wonder how he was supposed to find $300 for registration plus hotel plus travel when he couldn't even afford to fix his truck. His phone buzzed, a text from Lena. Board meeting went about as well as expected, being asked to take a leave of absence while they investigate. Worth it. Adrian typed back, I'm sorry. Don't be. I should have done this years ago. Feels good to finally have a spine. He wanted to say something meaningful, something that captured the gratitude and concern and strange camaraderie that had developed between them. Instead, he just sent, thank you for all of it. You're welcome. Now go be with your daughter and stop worrying about things you can't control. Good advice. Hard to follow. Tuesday brought more chaos. The board announced Vincent's resignation publicly, along with Marcus's departure to pursue other opportunities. Corporate speak for fired, but with enough severance to avoid a lawsuit. Jennifer Reeves was named interim CEO while the search for permanent leadership continued. Adrian's truck was towed to a mechanic who quoted him $1,800 in repairs. Can you do payment plan? Adrian asked. The mechanic, a grizzled man named Ray who'd been fixing Adrian's vehicles for 5 years, looked uncomfortable. I can do half now, half in 30 days, best I can offer. $900, due immediately. Adrian had maybe $400 in checking and another $200 he could pull from savings before hitting absolute zero. I need to think about it, he said. Take your time, but the truck's taking up space in my lot, so I can only hold it for a week before I gotta charge storage fees. Adrian walked home, a 40-minute trek in spring heat, and arrived sweaty and defeated. Mrs. Chen was waiting in the hallway with Mia, who'd gotten home from school early because of a teacher in service day. Your daughter tells me she won the science fair, Mrs. Chen said. First place, regional competition. Very impressive. My grandson won a science fair once, ended up studying engineering at MIT. She patted Mia's shoulder. This one's going places. I hope so. Mrs. Chen studied Adrian's face. You look stressed. Just work stuff. She didn't believe him, but didn't push. I made extra dumplings. Bring Mia down for dinner later if you want. It was the kind of kindness that made Adrian's throat tight. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. They went to her apartment at 6, ate dumplings, and listened to her stories about immigrating to America 40 years ago with nothing but hope and stubbornness. Mia absorbed every word, asking questions about engineering school and career choices and all the futures that seemed possible when you were 9 and brilliant. Adrian watched his daughter and thought about the state competition, about Stanford's summer program, about all the doors that could open if he could just find a way to get her there. Wednesday morning, Patricia Owens called him directly. Adrian, I wanted to give you an update. The board approved my recommendation for the director position. Pending successful interview with the new CEO, the job is yours if you want it. His heart stopped. They approved it? Unanimously. Apparently your performance during the Aurora crisis made more of an impression than you realized. Several board members specifically mentioned your name. Who's the new CEO? They haven't announced publicly yet, but between you and me, they're bringing in someone from outside the company. Fresh perspective, no ties to the old culture. She'll be starting Monday and wants to meet with all department heads and key personnel that week. Patricia paused. That includes you, if you accept the position. I haven't said yes yet. I know, but I'm telling you this because the salary they approved is 20% higher than what I initially proposed. They want you, Adrian. They're willing to invest in making it work. 20% higher. Adrian did the math quickly. more than double his current salary, enough to fix the truck, pay for state competition, afford the rent increase, actually save for Mia's future, enough to stop feeling like he was drowning. "Can I have until Friday?" he asked. "Absolutely. But Adrian, I don't make offers lightly. I think you'd be extraordinary in this role. I think you could help build something better than what was here before." After she hung up, Adrian sat in the mechanical room for a long time, staring at systems he'd maintained for 6 years. His phone buzzed with a reminder about Mia's parent-teacher conference that afternoon. Normal life continuing despite everything shifting underneath. The conference went well. Miss Ramirez had nothing but praise for Mia's work, her attitude, her potential. She mentioned the state competition, asked if they were planning to attend. "We're working on it," Adrian said, which was almost true. "I hope you can make it happen. Mia's gifted, Mr. Cole, genuinely gifted. She deserves every opportunity to develop that talent." "I know." That evening, Adrian sat Mia down and told her about Patricia's offer. Not the salary details. She was 9. She didn't need that pressure. But the basic facts. Better position, better hours, better chance of making things work. "So you'd still be home for dinner?" Mia asked. "Every night." "And you could come to my stuff? Like, actually come, not just promise and then have emergencies?" The question hurt because it was fair. "That's the plan." "Are you going to take it?" "I think so. But I wanted to talk to you first." She considered that. "Do you want to take it?" "I want to give you the things you deserve, like state competition, like Stanford's summer program if you win, like not having to worry about whether we can afford things." "But do you want to take it?" she asked again, more insistent. Adrian thought about it honestly. "I want to believe it's real, that someone actually built a job that values what I can do without requiring me to destroy my life to do it. But I'm scared it's going to turn into the same trap, just with a nicer title." "Then don't take it." "Mia, if you're scared it's a trap, don't take it. We'll figure out the money stuff some other way." She met his eyes with a seriousness that made her look far older than 9. "I'd rather have you home and broke than rich and gone." The simplicity of it, the clear-eyed assessment of what actually mattered, made Adrian realize his daughter was smarter than he'd given her credit for. "Okay," he said, "but I'm still taking it." "Why?" "Because sometimes you have to risk the trap to get the reward. And because I hope, this one might actually be real." Thursday, Adrian called Patricia and accepted the position. Friday, his truck was miraculously fixed for $1,200 instead of $1,800 because Ray decided to use refurbished parts and call it even. "You've been a good customer," Ray said when Adrian asked why. "And your kid's going places. Least I can do is make sure her dad can drive her there." Small kindnesses. They added up. Saturday morning, Adrian registered Mia for the state competition, booked a budget hotel in Sacramento, and mapped out a route that wouldn't destroy his newly repaired truck. The total cost came to just under $600, still more than he should be spending, still terrifying in its own way. But Mia's face when he told her made every cent worth it. "Really?" she asked, disbelief and joy mixing. "We're really going?" "We're really going." She hugged him so hard it hurt, and Adrian stood in his small apartment with his brilliant daughter in his arms and thought that maybe, just maybe, things were finally starting to work out. Monday arrived with the kind of nervous energy that came from knowing everything was about to change. Adrian dropped Mia at school, drove his repaired truck to Halcyon, and sat in the parking lot for 5 minutes trying to convince himself that Patricia's offer was real and not some elaborate setup that would collapse the moment he trusted it. His phone buzzed. "Lena, new CEO arrives at 9. Her name is Dr. Sarah Chen. MIT engineering, 10 years at Tesla. Reputation for actually caring about people. You're meeting her at 10:30. "You're back?" Adrian typed. "Technically still on leave, unofficially helping with transition because nobody else knows where anything is. Meet me in the lobby at 10:15. I'll brief you." Adrian pocketed his phone and headed inside. The building felt different, not physically, but in the way people moved through it. Less frantic, more uncertain, like everyone was waiting to see what the new regime would bring before committing to hope or fear. Carl was at his usual post, but instead of his normal easy smile, he looked tense. "You good?" Adrian asked. "Ask me in a week. New leadership means new security protocols, new procedures, new everything. I've seen these transitions before. Sometimes they're great. Sometimes they clean house. You've been here 15 years. You're not going anywhere. Tell that to Vincent. 15 years didn't save him. Fair point. Adrian headed to the basement, ostensibly to check on systems, but really to kill time until his meeting. The mechanical room was exactly as he'd left it, humming, functional, indifferent to corporate drama. He ran through diagnostics he didn't need to run, checked gauges that didn't need checking, and tried not to think about the fact that if this new position worked out, this room wouldn't be his domain anymore. 6 years. 6 years of grease and oil and late nights keeping things running. It should have felt like freedom to leave it behind. Instead, it felt like abandoning something that had needed him. At 10:15, he met Lena in the lobby. She looked tired but determined, wearing a visitor's badge instead of her usual employee ID. Still on leave? Adrian asked. Technically, but Sarah requested I stick around for the transition, so here I am. She guided him toward the elevators. Listen, Sarah's different from Vincent. She actually asks questions and listens to answers. She cares about data, not politics, but she's also very direct, so don't try to soften things or tell her what you think she wants to hear. I don't know what she wants to hear. Perfect. Just tell her the truth, and you'll be fine. The elevator opened on 42. Derek's desk was empty, replaced by a woman in her 30s who introduced herself as Claire and directed them to what used to be Vincent's office. Except it didn't look like Vincent's office anymore. The expensive desk was gone, replaced by a simple table with 4 chairs arranged around it. The walls had been stripped of corporate art and awards, leaving them bare and somehow more honest. And sitting at the table with a laptop and a cup of coffee was Dr. Sarah Chen. She was younger than Adrian expected, maybe 40, with black hair pulled into a practical ponytail and glasses that looked functional rather than fashionable. She stood when they entered, extending her hand with a firm grip. Adrian Cole, thank you for meeting with me. And Lena, thanks for facilitating. They sat. Sarah opened a file on her laptop. I've read Patricia's assessment and your employment record. I've also read the incident reports from the Aurora presentation night, including your improvised power restoration and the fire you helped contain. She looked up. Impressive work. Thank you. Patricia recommended you for Director of Facilities and Infrastructure. Before I approve that, I need to understand something. Sarah leaned forward. Why did you turn down Vincent's promotion? Adrian had answered this question before, but something about Sarah's direct gaze made him want to give her the full truth instead of the sanitized version. Because it required me to choose between being good at my job and being present for my daughter. And I'd already made that choice once and watched her cry because I broke a promise. I wasn't willing to build a career on broken promises. Sarah nodded slowly. And if I told you this new position would sometimes require the same choice, then I'd tell you I'm not interested. Even though the salary is substantial, even though it's a significant career advancement, even though Sarah typed something on her laptop. Good. Because the position I'm actually offering doesn't require that choice. The position Patricia proposed had strict hour limits and work-life protections. I'm expanding those protections and making them company policy across all departments. She turned the laptop to show him a document. New Employee Handbook. Section 4 covers mandatory limits on after-hours contact, emergency protocols that require approval from 2 department heads before pulling anyone in outside scheduled hours, and protections against retaliation for prioritizing family obligations. Adrian read through the section, waiting for the loophole, the exception clause that would undermine everything, but it wasn't there. It was straightforward, clear, enforceable. This applies to everyone? He asked. Everyone. Directors, managers, technicians, administrative staff. If we're going to rebuild this company's culture, it starts with treating people like they have lives outside these walls. Sarah closed the laptop. I spent 10 years at Tesla watching brilliant engineers burn out because they were expected to sacrifice everything for the mission. Some of them did incredible work. Most of them ended up divorced, estranged from their kids, or in therapy trying to figure out why success felt so hollow. She met his eyes. I'm not interested in building that kind of company here. What if there's a real emergency? Adrian asked. What if systems fail and people are actually at risk? Then we call you and you make the choice about whether to respond. But we don't manufacture emergencies to test loyalty. We don't frame routine problems as crises. And we damn sure don't punish people for having boundaries. Sarah pulled out a formal offer letter. This is the position. Director-level salary, full benefits. Team of 6 reporting to you across 3 locations. Standard hours are 8 to 5 with flex time for family obligations. You'll set policy, manage upgrades, and mentor the next generation of facilities staff. And if someone tries to turn this into another version of what Vincent built, you have my personal authorization to tell them to go to hell. Adrian took the letter, read through it twice, and still couldn't find the trap. When do you need an answer? I'd like one today, but I understand if you need time to think. He thought about Mia, waiting at school for him to pick her up at 3:30 like he'd promised. Thought about the state competition in 6 weeks and the years beyond that. Thought about the kind of example he wanted to set for his daughter about what work should look like and what it should cost. I'll take it, he said. On one condition. Sarah raised an eyebrow. What's that? Lena Hart gets taken off leave and given a real position. Not a lateral move or a demotion disguised as opportunity. A promotion that recognizes what she did took guts and integrity. Lena stared at him. Adrian, She blew the whistle on corruption when it would have been easier to stay quiet. She risked her career because it was the right thing to do. If you're serious about changing this company's culture, you need people like her in leadership, not punished for having a spine. Sarah looked at Lena. What position would you want? I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Think about it now. Lena took a breath. VP of Operations, with authority to implement the new culture policies and oversight on compliance. Someone needs to make sure these protections actually get enforced, not just written into a handbook and ignored. Done, Sarah made a note. You start immediately. Take the rest of today to think about your team structure, and we'll meet tomorrow to discuss implementation. She turned back to Adrian. Anything else? Just one thing. What happened to Marcus Vega? Resigned before he could be fired. No severance, no recommendation, and the parent company's legal team is reviewing whether to press charges. He won't work in this industry again. Sarah's expression hardened. I don't tolerate sabotage, or the kind of leadership that protects saboteurs. Adrian stood, offered his hand. Then I think we're going to get along fine. They shook on it. The rest of the day passed in a blur of paperwork and logistics. Adrian's official start date as director was 2 weeks out, giving him time to train his replacement and transition his maintenance responsibilities. The salary was more than he'd let himself imagine, enough to fix every financial problem that had kept him awake at night, enough to actually save for Mia's future, enough to stop feeling like one emergency away from disaster. He picked Mia up from school at 3:30 exactly, watched her face light up when she saw him waiting at the usual spot. You're early, she said, climbing into the truck. Right on time, actually. Same thing. She buckled her seatbelt. How was work? I got a promotion. Her eyes went wide. Really? But I thought you turned down the promotion. Different promotion. Better one. I start in 2 weeks. Does that mean you'll have to work late again? No, that's the best part. It means I get to come home every night. Be at all your competitions. Actually keep my promises. Mia was quiet for a moment, processing. Is it going to be like before? Where you say that and then something happens and you can't? The question hurt because it was earned, because he'd taught her to doubt his promises through pattern, not intention. I can't promise nothing will ever happen, Adrian said carefully. But I can promise I'm going to fight like hell to keep my word. And if I can't, I'm going to tell you why, instead of just apologizing after. Okay. She pulled out a robotics binder. Ms. Ramirez helped me design a new sensor array for the state competition. Want to see? They spent the drive home talking about gear ratios and programming logic, and Adrian realized this was what he'd been fighting for. Not just presence, but engagement. Not just being there, but actually being present for the moments that mattered. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Adrian trained Marcus Webb, a younger technician who'd been with Halcyon for 3 years and had the skill set to handle the basement maintenance. He documented systems, wrote procedures, transferred institutional knowledge that had lived only in his head for 6 years. And he met with Sarah twice more, planning the restructure of facilities management across all 3 Halcyon locations. She listened to his ideas about preventive maintenance, about sustainable systems, about building teams that could handle problems without requiring one person to carry everything. You've thought about this a lot, Sarah said during their second meeting. I've had 6 years to think about what should be different. Good, because I need people who know what's broken and how to fix it, not just mechanically, culturally. Lena joined them for the third meeting, bringing her implementation plans for the new work-life policies. She'd created monitoring systems, accountability measures, and feedback loops designed to catch problems before they became patterns. This is thorough, Sarah said, reviewing the documentation. Almost paranoid. Because I've seen how quickly good intentions become empty promises, Lena said. We need enforcement, not just policy. Agreed. Sarah approved the plans on the spot. After the meeting, Adrian and Lena walked to the parking lot together. She'd gotten her employee badge back. Her leave officially ended. Her new title announced to the company that morning. Hell of a month, Adrian said. Tell me about it. A month ago I was climbing the ladder by playing it safe. Now I'm VP of operations because I stopped playing it safe. Any regrets? None. She unlocked her car. You? Ask me after the state competition. When is that? Saturday. We're driving up Friday after school. Good luck. Mia's brilliant. She'll do great. Yeah. Adrian leaned against his truck. Thanks, Lena, for all of it. For the warning about the promotion, for blowing the whistle on Marcus, for showing up at the science fair. You didn't have to do any of that. Yes, I did. Because watching you choose your daughter over your career reminded me why I got into this work in the first place. Before I got so focused on climbing that I forgot what I was climbing toward. She smiled. So thank you too. She drove away, and Adrian sat in his truck for a moment before heading home. The building looked the same as it had 6 years ago when he'd first started, but everything underneath had changed. New leadership, new policies, new possibility that work could be something other than slow erosion of everything else. Maybe it would last. Maybe it wouldn't. But for the first time in years, Adrian felt like he was building toward something instead of just surviving. Friday arrived with the kind of nervous energy that came before important trips. Adrian left work at noon, picked Mia up from school early with permission from the principal, and they started the drive to Sacramento. Mia sat in the passenger seat with her robot carefully secured in a padded box between her feet, reviewing her presentation notes for the 100th time. You're going to be great, Adrian said. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. What if I'm not? What if I get there and everyone else is better and I freeze up and… Mia, Adrian reached over and squeezed her hand. You won regionals. You built a robot that makes real-time navigation decisions using adaptive AI. You're 9 years old and you understand concepts most college students struggle with. You're going to be great. She took a breath, steadied herself. Okay. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, watching the landscape change from city to farmland to the sprawl of Sacramento suburbs. The hotel was budget level, but clean, and Mia spent the evening testing her robot in the parking lot while Adrian watched from a bench and tried not to think about the fact that tomorrow would determine whether she got the Stanford summer program or not. Saturday morning brought perfect weather, sunny but not too hot, with the kind of clear sky that felt like good luck. The competition was at the Sacramento Convention Center, even bigger than regionals, with categories for everything from robotics to chemistry to environmental science. Mia's category was in Hall C. They set up her display, checked and rechecked her robot, and waited while judges made their rounds. Adrian recognized the other competitors, kids from wealthy districts with expensive equipment, kids from magnet schools with dedicated STEM programs, kids who'd probably been preparing for this all year. And then there was Mia, with her modified kit robot and hand-drawn schematics, looking small but determined. You've got this, Adrian told her one more time. I know. She adjusted her robot's position. But thanks for being here anyway. The judging took 3 hours. Mia presented twice, answered technical questions, demonstrated her robot's capabilities. Adrian watched from the observation area, his heart in his throat every time she hesitated or second-guessed herself. But she never froze, never backed down, just explained her work with the kind of quiet confidence that came from actually understanding what she'd built. When the judging finally ended, they had another hour before results. Adrian bought Mia lunch from the convention center food court, and they sat together watching other categories present. However this goes, Adrian said, I'm proud of you. I know. And it doesn't change anything. Win or lose, you're still brilliant. Dad, stop. You're making me nervous. Sorry. They finished lunch in silence, then headed back to Hall C for the awards ceremony. The third place winner was a boy from Palo Alto who'd built a robot that could sort plastic by type. Second place went to a girl from San Francisco with a drone designed to monitor air quality. Both were impressive. Both were exactly the kind of polished, well-funded projects Adrian had been worried about. And then the head judge approached the microphone. First place in the robotics and engineering category goes to Mia Cole from Metro Elementary for her adaptive navigation system with real-time environmental learning. Adrian's chest tightened. Mia's mouth fell open. Go, Adrian said. Go get your award. She ran to the stage, accepted a trophy even bigger than the one from regionals, and received an envelope that contained the scholarship information for Stanford's summer program. When she came back, she was crying and smiling at the same time. I won, she said. I actually won. You did. I'm so proud of you, Bug. The scholarship covers everything, room, board, tuition, all of it. She clutched the envelope like it might disappear. I get to go to Stanford. Adrian hugged her, and for a moment everything else fell away. The building emergencies and corporate restructures and financial stress and all of it. Just his daughter, brilliant and beaming, holding a future she'd earned through talent and determination. They drove home Sunday morning, Mia chattering about Stanford and what projects she might work on and whether she'd be the youngest person there. Adrian listened and smiled and felt something settle in his chest, a peace he hadn't experienced in years. Monday. He started his new position officially. Corner office on the 35th floor, team of 6 experienced technicians ready to learn his methods, and a calendar that actually ended at 5 p.m. The first week was orientation, meetings, planning sessions with Sarah about long-term infrastructure upgrades. The second week, they implemented the new emergency protocols. Someone tried to call Adrian at midnight about a minor HVAC issue. He referred them to the on-call technician and went back to sleep. No consequences, no retaliation, just the system working the way it was designed to. The third week, Lena stopped by his office with coffee and an update on policy implementation. How's it going? She asked. Still waiting for the other shoe to drop? What if there isn't another shoe? What if this is just what work looks like when leadership actually gives a damn? Adrian considered that. Then I guess I need to learn how to trust good things. Same. She set the coffee on his desk. I'm putting together a task force to review compensation across all departments. Make sure people are being paid what they're worth, not just what they'll accept. Want to be on it? Yeah, I do. Good. We meet Thursday afternoons. Shouldn't run past 5, obviously. She left, and Adrian sat at his desk looking out at the city below. Somewhere down there was his apartment, where Mia was probably working on new robot designs or homework or planning for Stanford. Somewhere was his truck, paid off and running smooth. Somewhere was a future that didn't require sacrificing everything to achieve something. His phone buzzed, a text from Mia. Miss Ramirez says they're doing a profile on me for the school website about winning state. Is it okay if they interview you too? Of course, Adrian typed back. Proud to be your dad. Love you. Love you too, Bug. He set the phone down and went back to work, planning maintenance schedules and team structures, building something sustainable instead of just surviving something broken. A month later, Halcyon hosted a town hall to introduce the new culture policies to all employees. Sarah stood at the front of the main auditorium, explaining the changes, fielding questions, making it clear that this wasn't temporary or performative. Some of you are skeptical, she said. You've seen initiatives like this before. Leadership announces big changes, everyone nods along, and 6 months later we're back to the same patterns. I understand that skepticism, but I'm asking you to give us a chance to prove this is different. Someone raised their hand. What happens when there's a real emergency and we need people to work extra hours? We handle it like adults, Sarah said. We ask, not demand. We compensate fairly, and we acknowledge that no emergency is worth destroying someone's family or health. If we can't run this company without treating people like resources to be consumed, then we don't deserve to run this company. Adrian sat in the audience next to Lena, watching people's faces shift from skeptical to cautiously hopeful. Think it'll work? Lena whispered. I think we're going to find out. And they did. Over the next few months, the changes settled into routine. People went home at reasonable hours. Emergency calls decreased because preventive maintenance actually got funded. Turnover dropped. Morale improved. The company didn't collapse without Vincent's leadership. It actually seemed to thrive. Adrian built his team, trained them in the methods he'd developed over 6 years of keeping systems running on minimal resources, taught them how to diagnose problems before they became crises, how to build redundancies that didn't require one person to carry everything. And every day at 5 p.m., he went home to Mia. They had dinner together, did homework together, worked on robot designs together. On weekends, they explored the city or worked on projects or just spent time being present in each other's lives. Summer arrived with Stanford's engineering program. Adrian drove Mia to campus, helped her move into the dorm she'd share with other young engineers, and spent the first night in a nearby hotel in case she needed him. She didn't call, which meant she was thriving. He drove home alone, his truck feeling empty without her chatter filling the space, but his heart full knowing she was exactly where she needed to be. The program was 3 weeks long. Mia came back sunburned and exhausted and more excited about engineering than Adrian had ever seen her. She'd worked with professors, built projects with college students, learned things that made her regular school curriculum feel basic. "I want to do that forever," she said on the drive home. "Build things, solve problems, make stuff that matters." "Then that's what you'll do." "You think I can?" "I know you can." Fall brought new challenges at Halcyon. The company was expanding, acquiring 2 smaller firms and integrating their systems. Adrian's team grew to 12 people across 5 locations. The work was demanding but manageable, complex but not consuming, and every night he was home by 6. Lena's policy enforcement was working. A manager in the sales department tried to institute mandatory weekend calls for his team. Lena shut it down within a day, citing the new handbook and Sarah's backing. The manager complained to Sarah directly. Sarah fired him the next morning. "Zero tolerance," she told the company in an email that made the message clear. These policies aren't suggestions. They're how we operate. If you can't lead within these boundaries, you can't lead here. People stopped testing the boundaries after that. One evening in October, Adrian and Mia were working on her latest robot design when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Adrian Cole? Yeah? This is Marcus Vega." Adrian's hand tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" "To apologize." Marcus's voice was different than Adrian remembered, quieter, less confident. "For what I did. For trying to bribe you, for the sabotage, for all of it." "Why now?" "Because I've spent the last 6 months unemployed and unemployable thinking about the choices that got me here. And I realized you were right. About everything." A pause. "I tried to destroy something because I thought profit mattered more than people. You saved it because you knew people mattered more than profit, and you were right." Adrian didn't know what to say. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Marcus continued. "I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that what you did, choosing your daughter over that promotion, refusing my offer, standing up for what mattered, it made me reconsider everything. So thank you, and I'm sorry." He hung up before Adrian could respond. Adrian set the phone down, processing. Mia looked up from her robot. "Who was that?" "Someone who needed to apologize." "Did you forgive them?" "I don't know yet. Is that okay?" "Yeah." She went back to her wiring. Sometimes people take a while to figure out what they feel. Wisdom from a 9-year-old. Adrian smiled and went back to helping her with the robot. December brought the end-of-year company meeting. Sarah announced record profits, successful expansion, and industry recognition for Halcyon's new culture, policies. Other companies were reaching out, asking how they'd managed the transformation, wanting to replicate the model. "We did this together," Sarah said to the assembled employees. "Every person in this room made this possible by believing we could do better and holding us accountable when we fell short. Thank you." After the meeting, Adrian found himself standing with Lena and Carl, watching people file out of the auditorium. "Year ago, I was watching my career burn down because I couldn't keep working the way Vincent wanted," Adrian said. "Year ago, I was too scared to speak up about anything," Lena added. "Year ago, I was telling you to sell out for a paycheck," Carl finished. "Look at us now." They stood there for a moment, 3 people who'd survived a broken system and helped build something better in its place. "Think it'll last?" Adrian asked. Maybe, Lena said. Maybe not, but we proved it's possible. That counts for something. That night, Adrian came home to find Mia had made dinner, pasta with sauce from a jar, but she'd done it herself while he was at the meeting. They ate together, talking about her upcoming winter break and what projects she wanted to work on.
Dad, Mia said as they were cleaning up, do you ever miss it? Miss what? The basement, the maintenance work, being the person who fixed everything. Adrian thought about it honestly. Sometimes I was good at that work, knew those systems better than anyone, but I don't miss what it cost me. The hours, the stress, the feeling that I was always choosing between you and everything else. Do you think we made the right choice? With the new job and everything? I think we made the choice that let me be your dad instead of just the guy who pays the bills. So yeah, right choice. She smiled and went back to washing dishes. Later that night, after Mia was asleep, Adrian stood at his window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there were buildings running on systems he'd designed, teams he'd trained, policies he'd helped implement. Somewhere was Halcyon Technologies, thriving not despite treating people well, but because of it. And here was his apartment, small and nothing fancy, but filled with a daughter who knew she mattered more than any job. His phone buzzed, a message from Sarah. Board approved your proposal for the apprenticeship program. We start recruiting high school students next month. Want to help design the curriculum? Adrian smiled and typed back, absolutely. Thanks for trusting me with this. Thank you for knowing what matters and fighting for it. That's the kind of leadership we need. He set the phone down and thought about the past year, about Vincent's manipulation and Marcus's sabotage, and all the ways the system had been designed to extract everything from people and give back nothing but paychecks. About Lena's courage and Patricia's insight and Sarah's commitment to actually changing things. About Mia's brilliance and Mrs. Chen's kindness and Ray's refurbished parts and all the small acts of humanity that had helped them survive. And he thought about the choice he'd made to value presence over profit, relationships over recognition, the person he wanted to be over the person circumstances kept trying to force him to become. It hadn't been easy. There had been moments when he'd wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake, if choosing family over career would leave them both worse off. But standing here now with his daughter safe and his future stable and his integrity intact, Adrian knew he'd made the only choice that mattered. Because in the end, success meant nothing if you destroyed yourself to achieve it. Promotions meant nothing if they cost you the people you loved. Money meant nothing if you were too consumed to enjoy it. What mattered was showing up, being present, keeping promises, building a life that didn't require sacrificing your humanity to sustain it. That was the lesson Adrian had learned, the one he'd teach to the apprentices who'd come through his program, the one he hoped Mia would carry with her when she grew up and faced her own impossible choices. That strength wasn't about how much you could endure. It was about knowing what deserved protection and having the courage to never let it go. He checked on Mia one more time, found her sleeping peacefully with her robotics binder on the nightstand, and went to bed knowing that tomorrow he'd wake up and go to a job that valued him. Come home to a daughter who needed him, live a life that didn't require him to choose between the two. And that was enough. More than enough. That was everything.